took another look at the only public engagement shared by Her Majesty the Queen and Meghan Markle soon after she had married Harry. And there are a couple body language signals that tell a lot about each one's personalities. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and it will be great if you join us by just liking this video, subscribing, and hitting that bell. Let's get down to it. Well, the first message that everyone got from this engagement was the color of both dresses. It's important to remember that this is always carefully chosen and at the same time coordinated so they would not wear the same tone. It is relevant because the Queen chose a color that was supportive of Meghan at that moment. She wore green. I don't mean that Meghan was green with envy, but green is a tone usually related with nature and, of course, the constant cycle of life. This was a nice nod to the fact that Meghan and Harry, at least up to that point, represented the next generation of royals. It's also worth mentioning that the Queen also wore green to their wedding, so this was sort of doubling down on that message. Meghan was wearing an ivory dress, very close to white. I think she understood the Queen's look when she arrived at her wedding all wrapped up in pure white. But ivory still projects the concept of being pure, innocent, and even naive. Either way, it's great that Meghan did not go in her favorite color. Now, the first body language signal is one of absolutely breaking protocol, and it's Meghan walking right ahead of the Queen in the middle of the engagement. This is always a no-no. It's important to mention that Meghan, at that moment, had the help of both Samantha Cohen, who you can see sitting behind them here, and Amy Pickerel. Both of them had the job of assisting Meghan in everything regarding protocol and, of course, helping her in the middle of the engagement itself in case anything comes up. And you can imagine how important was this engagement because it would set a precedent with future similar events. Even so, when this happened, many were quick to defend Meghan since, after all, this was the first time she was going out alone with the Queen, and it's absolutely understandable that anyone in her place would be nervous. I'm sure that even Chuck Norris would be nervous in such a situation. But there is a problem with the assumption that Meghan was just nervous and that's why she acted like that. It's important to remember that in situations like this, we transform into factories of stress hormones that dictate one of three actions. We either try to escape, we try to fight, or we freeze. You might have heard about the fight or flight response, but in reality it also includes the become frozen in fear option. And there's proof that Meghan was briefed on basic royal protocol because when she was sitting, she kept her knees together with a slight slant of her ankles to one side. That's the proper way of sitting for royals, and in fact, it has been made popular by the Duchess of Cambridge. But then, Meghan must have known that under no circumstances she was allowed to walk or be or exist in front of the Queen. I'm sure that's one of the 10 absolutely must-know rules for these situations. Meghan's behavior has a bigger contradiction because throughout all the engagements she looked a bit tense. In fact, in more than one occasion she tried to kneel but her body was rather stiff, which makes it all the more strange because she kneeled with much more agility when she was 8 months pregnant. But whatever. My point is that being nervous and tense is something that is going to force you into not reacting when the time comes, to effectively freeze and try to figure out what you should do. But that doesn't happen at this moment. Meghan just lost any nervousness as soon as she heard the public screaming her name and offering her flowers. Even if both Samantha and Amy were right behind her, we don't know if they were willing to loosen up roles at the moment when Meghan decided to put quite some distance between herself and the Queen. Maybe it's like Harry says, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. And I said that this is a contradiction because if Meghan was supposedly nervous, then it would have made more sense to stay behind the Queen at all times. Well, not directly behind the Queen because you know how creepy can Meghan be in situations like those. This is a signal that gives you a clue about someone's personality, a contradiction. And that is one of the reasons why Meghan's attitude was mostly seen as spontaneous. Because even in engagements so critical like this one, she did not behave like someone afraid or not doing things right, especially if you're still learning and practicing. I'm sure that she would be more careful if instead of a royal engagement with the Queen, she went out climbing for the first time. No room for any mistake. despite all her social climbing experience. But the other moment that I want to mention is when they were going to get on the car at the end of the first leg of the trip. This time Meghan was actually behaving like someone that has no idea of what to do at that moment, and this time there was some logic to it. Because royal protocol states that the most important person should sit diagonal to the driver, so that would be the Queen. But the problem is that the Queen just prefers to sit behind the driver. As some royal specialists say, this is a matter of preference and habit. It's worth noticing that at this moment Meghan did not have any help, so she had to navigate herself. Now, many people claim that this was absolutely Meghan's mistake to enter the car before the Queen, but the fact is that two things happened. The first one is that Meghan allegedly asked the Queen what was her preference. I can't be sure because there's no way of reading it from our perspective, but what we can see is that the Queen effectively signaled with her hand at her head to Meghan, telling her to go ahead. In fact, that's more or less what this man did a couple seconds ago. Now, this is not about Meghan's behavior, but more the Queen's behavior. She really tried to make Meghan feel at ease on this first trip. Either way, it was the Queen who made the signal for Meghan to get in. Still, Meghan had her doubts, and it happened a second time. Here, the Queen actually went in first, again, because she wanted to be right behind the driver. And Meghan, once again, did not get the memo that apparently everyone has to get on the car through the same door. You can imagine what this chap is thinking. Amateur. And it's also strange that Meghan was confused about the one-car door policy, because remember that she had troubles with her own driver's seat car door, and she must have been following the same one-door rule and did not think about the passenger seat. I have mentioned this other times. It is always better to err on the side of caution. We know that Meghan has always had that big problem with that simple statement, and that must be the reason she acted like it was a race to the finish line. Even if she had the support of her advisors, they must have been aware that in the age of social media, cameras are king and angles matter. This didn't look good or appropriate, but anyway, it pales in comparison to whatever Meghan did later. And in the case of the Queen, I'm sure that she wanted to have patience with her granddaughter-in-law because, after all, every single one of us have been rookies at one point in our lives. But you can imagine that someone that has lived so much and has met so many people and had to deal with every kind of personality that you can imagine, she had already seen through Meghan from a mile away. There's always the benefit of the doubt, but in many cases, experience just beats everything else. The secret will always be in the way you observe and analyze people every time you can. If you want to refine your observation skills, all you have to do is download my 100 body language tips right in the description of this video. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas, and it will always be a pleasure, my body language buddies. Much love and bliss.